Welcome to our Thriving Singles Community podcast, where we celebrate resilience, growth, and transformation through life's challenges. I am interviewing the willing members of my family who are willing to share their life stories. And I have had so much fun with this. So I'm here with my brother, Michael Tillack. When I was 9 years old, my mom had Mikey. And so he is my half brother because we share the same mom, but not the same dad. So we've never considered that or called it half because we were raised together. Yep. I'm just going to let him share his story. I may have interjections. I may have memories that he doesn't have about his life. So it'll be fun to just hear Mike's story and all of his experiences, the lessons he's learned, or characteristics that he's gained. He is an amazing man, husband, brother, father. He's someone that I look up to very much. And so I also need to be careful not to get him crying because that happens. I have a tendency. So I'll let you start, and you can just start with your name, your birthday, anything you've heard or know about that, and I can fill in blanks that you might not know about.
Well, thank you for having me. First off, I think that was the first time I can remember that you've ever called me Michael.
Oh, this is true.
Or even Mike, which is fine. Which is
Mikey.
Which is fine.
He's Mikey.
Yeah.
But I've gotten in trouble a few times recently because the first time we live in a small town, I'll just tell you this real quick. And the first time I knew that he worked with the sheriff in town. And when I met him, I said, "Oh, you might know my brother Mikey." And he loved that. He was so excited to get to work and start calling him Mikey. And I think that's what now is everyone calling you Mikey.
Now everyone at work calls you Mikey.
So I got in trouble. Sorry. Anyway, so this is now I've learned I should call him Mike or Michael, but he's Mikey to us. Only sisters can call him that. You know that, right? And nieces and nephews.
It always will be. But
that's good.
So I was born January 10th, 1978. Was it 4 years that mom and dad met before? They met on January 10th.
I think so.
Was it 4 years? Something like that. Anyways, so yes, I am either the oldest or the second from the youngest, like you've talked about before.
Yeah.
Depending on
which siblings you're
counting. Yeah. I was named after Michael the Archangel, who was Adam.
Yeah.
And at least that's what mom always says is that's where they got the inspiration from, was Michael the Archangel.
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Middle name Edward after his dad.
Yep. And dad didn't have a middle name because his dad had like 4 and did not want his kids to have that.
So he just did all or nothing.
Yep, all or nothing. All or nothing. So yeah. Wow. I was born and raised in South Jordan. Growing up in South Jordan, it was small back then. I mean, it was South Jordan was small. Yeah. And I remember when this Sandy Mall was built, and me and my friends, we would, the furthest west the bus would come was the Jordan River Temple. So we'd ride our bikes to the Jordan River Temple, jump on the bus, and take the bus to the mall. Yes, I am a Gen Xer, born in the late 70s. Grew up on real music, 80s, mid 80s, yes. Early 90s music. Yep.
Thanks to us, older siblings.
That's right. Walked to school. I think the only school that I didn't walk to was elementary school, but we walked to middle school, which is just a few blocks from the house. All of our friends, that was middle school was a really, really, really fun time. I had a ton of friends. throughout the neighborhood. They would all meet at our house in the morning, and we would all walk to school.
Nice.
And uh, they played a big role. Each of us played a big role in each other's life. And unfortunately, there's not very many of them that I talk to anymore. I think there's like one. I very seldom talk to him, but that was a lot of fun. That was a really, really good time. And then went to Bingham. That's kind of when things started to change.
High school.
Yeah, high school.
So would you call yourself, were you a jock, or were you were a cowboy? Everyone had to have an identity back in high school.
Yeah, Bingham was definitely known as the cowboy school. And my group of friends, we considered ourselves cowboys, but
Yeah.
we didn't rodeo, we didn't do high school rodeo, so we didn't fit in with the other cowboys. So we just kind of hung out, did our own thing, and
Urban cowboys, right? Is that what they called you?
no, I'm not gonna admit to that title for nothing. But yeah, we just kind of did it. We just kind of did our own thing.
Okay, no, I guess the other term is rhinestone cowboy.
Oh yeah,
Rhinestone cowboy.
I'm not gonna admit to that title either.
Anyway,
But
so I want to interject this part because this is something that just occurred to me, that when you were sharing that I'm 9 years older than Mike. And so when I moved out of the house when you were 9 years old. So I don't know anything about your life from 9 until you were married. So everything that you're sharing is new to me. Only thing I've heard of was well, no, because I served a mission when I was 21, but I still left home at 18. Oh, actually, it was 22 when I served a mission, actually. But all of these years, I was away from home when I wasn't raised with you from 9 and older. So this is all new to me.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Huh.
but I want you to just keep sharing because I'm learning.
Huh.
Sorry, I just thought about that.
Yeah.
All good stuff to learn about. So you were a cowboy in high school, and you were a troublemaker. Would you say that?
I wouldn't say a troublemaker. But I didn't really get in much trouble at school. Probably because I was never there long enough to get in trouble.
There we go.
Um, getting through getting through high school was tough. Out of I think there was close to 900 kids in my graduating class, and I think I graduated 898th
Wow.
of class. Because of mom again. I graduated high school. Her begging and pleading my teachers to pass me a couple of cases of tab got me at least a D out of my history class. But I did. I graduated high school, and I can honestly say I owe it all to mom.
That's awesome, though.
Mom and I joked about it all the time that her name should actually be on my diploma and not mine. But
It's funny.
childhood was great. I mean, I had a good childhood. Uh, spent a lot of time. Well, to back up again a little bit, we got horses when I was, oh, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around there.
Sounds about right. I remember horses, yeah, but I don't know if I had left home at that time yet.
It may have been even earlier than that. And once we got horses, that became a big a big part of my life. Dad and I would ride, we'd ride a lot. Well, we rode quite a bit, but from day one, my job was to take care of the stalls and the corral, and I would come home from school, and that's what I would do. And it was to be done right. And same thing, watering trees. We lived
Oh
on
my
that
gosh.
corner, and we planted all those trees, and it was my job to.
Like 50.
It was a lot.
I don't know if it was 50, but it seemed like it.
There,
30 to
there,
50.
there,
Wow.
there was a lot. So growing up,
Yeah.
Dad did expect a lot,
This is a slave driver.
a lot, but it helped
Hard
me.
worker.
It helped me learn. Um, it helped me pick up a good work
Discipline.
ethic and
Yeah.
discipline, and how to finish a task.
Yeah.
Now jumping forward, that's exactly the same now, but it was
Yeah.
it was then.
Yeah.
It was then. But
Yeah. I
but
remember all that. So do you remember anything about step siblings or your older siblings? Your Tiffany, it was just you and Tiffany at home.
for a long time, Denise was as far I don't remember Denise being at home.
No, how old is she? So how much older is she than you? So I'm 9 years older, so she's 6 years older than that.
Yeah.
She's like 15 or 16 years older than you, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
she was long gone.
yeah. And
No.
Darren the same. He was gone. I do. He always tells me a story that matter of fact, I have the letter.
Oh, nice.
I have the letter. He was really excited when I was born because now he has a little
Yes,
baby brother,
brother.
and he wanted so bad for me to be able to sleep in his room with him, but Mom said no.
Oh.
And he always talks about that. That was, he wasn't very happy with that,
Oh.
but
Sad.
um, but I have more memories with you at home than I do with Darren and Denise. But Denise, we spent a lot of time with her. She would come and get us, Tiff and I. One of our big traditions was she would come and get us for our birthday.
Oh, yeah.
And she'd take us out to eat or to the mall and let us pick out our birthday gift. And then that was awesome. I looked forward to that. We spent a lot of time skiing. As a matter of fact, for my 16th birthday, she said she'd take wherever we wanted to go for our 16th
That's right,
birthday.
yeah.
And my birthday's in January, so we went to Aspen
Nice.
and skied for 3 days there. And I mean, it was so much fun, so much fun,
That's very cool.
so much fun. Darren and I, he would come and get me periodically, and we'd go. I remember one time we went tubing. We would go fishing with your dad, and Darren and I would go down to the Jordan River and catch big old whitefish and carp and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun getting to know your dad.
No,
To
really? I
Dennis,
didn't
yeah.
realize you had spent time
Yeah,
with
it was
Dennis.
there was a
A
handful
little
of
bit.
time,
Oh,
a little bit,
that's cool.
but and then, growing up with you played a big part in my life. And I don't think I've ever told you that. I remember a few times when things were kind of tough, whether I'd gotten in trouble or was just feeling bad and stuff. Were always you were always there. You were always there to lift me up and say it's going to be okay and give me a hug, and it was great. It was really good. I remember one time. I don't know why I used to go hide out in the laundry room, and you remember the laundry room. It had the wash and dry. It had those closets.
Yeah.
It was one big room. Well, it was normal for us just to pull the clothes out and throw them on the floor. Well, there was a heater vent there. And I remember I climbed in the clothes because they were warm, laying on the heater vent. I can't remember exactly what was going on, but I remember you came in and we were talking to me. It was, if I remember right, it was something to do with school. I was struggling with school or something like that. And we talked about the future and stuff like that. I wish I could remember what it was,
Yeah.
but I do remember it was um it helped me come out of a pretty big funk
Mm.
then. But and then yeah, and then you did, then you left on your mission. And then you came home for a little bit.
I was back and forth. So I don't know what time you're thinking of, but it was one of those times when I was back and forth.
I remember we came out to see you. One of the times, uh, Mom and Tiff and Denise, um, I can't remember if we left first or if they left, but anyways, Darren and I drove out together, and we um I hope I'm not throwing him under the bus for this, but we stopped in Mesquite.
That's not good.
We stopped in Mesquite, and I mean, I was probably 8, 9, 10. I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And he sent me to the arcade with, a whole big old sack full of quarters. And he said, I'll come and get you in just a little bit.
Gosh, you could never do that today.
No. So here I am wandering around this big, ginormous arcade, and playing games. And I don't know how long it had been, but he comes running in. I mean, he come running in and he grabbed me. He's like, hey, he says, we gotta go. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he goes, I'll explain to you in the car. So we go running out of the car, jump in the car, and he says, I just won a bunch of money. And I can't even remember how much it was. I for some reason, like $500 or $600 is what's sticking in my mind. It may have been a lot more than that. But I'm like, well, why are we leaving stuff? I said, well, he says something about he was worried that they were gonna come after him for taxes or something like that. So we jumped in the car and we took off and um ended up staying the night in Vegas, and we stayed at this hotel um, that had this really awesome pool. It was like kind of like an above ground pool. And I remember we went swimming at like 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a ton of fun. And then we went and spent
Good memory.
some time in San
That's
Diego.
so cool.
It was fun. Yeah, that was a
So
lot
you've
of
never
fun.
told that story before, I take it.
Wonder if Darren even remembers.
That is funny. That's awesome.
But and then yeah, my dad and I spent a lot of time on the horses after that. Yeah, that was fun. Um, one really specific memory that sticks out was uh, I was in middle school, and Mom come to pick me up from school, and we were planning this horse ride trip, this overnight trip we were going to pack in, and Mom comes and gets me, and she takes me over to Reams, and she's like, your dad called and said that I need to get you a pair of boots, some Wranglers, a hat, and stuff like that to go on this trip. And I mean, I remember how awesome I felt that yeah, I'm finally gonna get my cowboy hat
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
get to spend some time on the horses. And we went up Butterfield Canyon, and there's this really awesome uh, little valley, this little kind of, I guess, this little field that we would stay in. And I remember we had just settled down. We were just hanging out, uh, just like in the movies. You're leaning back on your saddle. The horses are over grazing. Um, it was dark. The fire was going, and the coyotes started yelping.
Hmm.
And
That'd
Dad's,
be scary.
yeah, and yeah, I wish we would have wrote this stuff down. I think that's everybody's wish.
Yeah.
Again, I was pretty young, and I remember Dad always says, he says, Matt, he says, when they started yelping, he says, you were scooting closer and closer and closer. And then when we go out and get firewood, he says, you were so close to me that I would trip over you. yeah, there was had a lot of good times on that mountain. Spend a lot of time on the horses, spend a lot of time riding with Dad. Those were some really, really, really good memories. A
That's
lot of
good.
fun.
So it might have mended some of the not so good memories. All that I remember, Mike has always had such a tender heart. I consider myself empathic, like where I can sense people's emotions. I don't know if that was a lifelong thing, but I do think that I gained that being an older sibling of you and Tiff. Just this having these younger siblings that were so tenderhearted and where I saw as an like teenager growing up and being so sensitive to emotions and other people's experiences that I always felt like I could feel your emotions. And so it was anyway, I just remember you being so tenderhearted and I was always feeling so bad for you when Dad was just a little rough and maybe just expectations. Yeah, that's something I haven't mentioned is the way we were disciplined. I've never said that. If you want to say that, you can. We would have lectures, sit on the chair for as long as he wants you to be there to hear everything he has to say about what you did that was wrong. Don't mean for it to be negative of him. Because I always have to say, just knowing what he came from is so different than how he was. But that was our experience. We were fed a lot of negativity. We were fed you're not good enough. We're fed you're not smart enough. You're not doing well. His belief is if you don't hear the negative, you won't know how to change it. And my belief was opposite of that. I felt like when you are taught what your potential is and what you can be and what you really do have innately in your soul to be, that's more empowering than being told that you're bad. That's what I was always sensitive to how you were treated and
that's the way I have tried to raise my girls.
That's how you do raise them, yes.
Is in the military, when you go through basic training, they beat you down and then bring you up, and
yeah, maybe that's part of the belief. His dad was military. That could be where it came from. Beat you down.
To show you what your weaknesses are.
Yep. I'm glad you don't do that.
I remember when Shelby's my oldest, when she was probably, it was when we moved back, it was when we were here. So she had to have been about 4 or 5. Yeah, about 4 or 5. Anyways, I remember I had this really quite amazing experience. I mean, it was almost like an out-of-body experience. I remember she had done something, I can't even remember what, but I remember lecturing her. I remember she was sitting on the chair. And I mean, I didn't sit her there. She was just sitting there. And I remember standing there going over the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I kid you not, I was standing over here watching me sit there going through the exact same thing. And I'm like, whoa, okay, no more, no more of this. Yeah. And ever since then, I've tried to not lecture, not to lecture, but I remember one time I was again, I don't even remember what it was for. I wasn't the most honest kid, and Dad's thing was honesty. I mean, the worst thing in the world you could do was be dishonest. And I wasn't the most honest. And I look back on it now, and I really, it was fear. But what Dad tried to drill into me, at least, was just be honest from the beginning, and you won't have this problem. And for some reason, I just could not.
It's hard when you feel like the consequences are going to be bad.
Right.
Either way.
Right. There's a chance that it's not. It's a chance that
if he believes something else, yes.
But yeah, I remember one day I was standing in the living room up against, where we had the TV up against that one wall. I remember standing there, and he was lecturing, and he'd been going back and forth for so long. I would just stand there. Well, I guess it must have had my knees locked. Well, I got nauseous,
Oh,
and he could see it. I mean, I could feel myself getting ready to pass out. And he says, and I'm like, Dad, I said, I'm going to be sick. And he says, well, he says, you go in that bathroom, and he says, you throw up, and he says, you get right back here.
oh my gosh.
And and I don't know whatever happened. I can't remember whatever happened after that. Uh, if we finished our conversation or the lecture or whatever, but
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it there was some hard times.
I hear dads are harder on their boys too.
Yeah,
Not always, but maybe he was harder on his boys.
yeah. Oh yes,
Higher expectations, maybe. I don't know.
yes, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I remember, I don't know if boys really, dream about the kids they're going to have, but I did know from a very, very young age that I didn't want boys.
Interesting, yeah. Well, maybe that's just your lot in life, like that you were meant to raise
Have girls.
daughters. Yeah.
Yeah. I seen how Dad treated Tiff, his daughter, over me, and I didn't I didn't want that for my boys.
Yeah.
And I knew that if watching him with Tiff, that I could be that way with girls. But what's weird, I never even realized that until until after I had Shelby. And Dad had made a comment about having boys, and it was something clicked. I'm like, I never really thought about that. I did. But
Interesting.
and then that expectation that you just mentioned, I fully believe that the reason why Dad was so hard on me is because he had expectations of me that wasn't me, and in turn, I think I had expectations of Dad that he didn't have,
Mm,
so I think we do. I think we
that's
put
true.
these,
Yeah.
and it does. You're like, well, why in the heck?
Mhm.
Why aren't you doing this? It's just I can see it, but you can't see it. Why aren't you doing this? And
Yeah.
he was trying to make me into something that I wasn't capable of being. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we're capable of just about anything, but when it comes down to it, are we?
Yeah. Frustration comes from, and anger even comes from unfulfilled expectations. So if you have a lifetime of unfulfilled expectations of someone, your relationship is going to be strained. And that's how I feel like your relationship has been with with
Yeah,
your dad.
yeah,
There's always, not recently, but there's always been the expectations that were unfulfilled.
yeah, yep,
Right.
yep. But I did learn a lot.
Yeah.
I learned, growing up, living in that environment. Again, I didn't have a horrible childhood. I had a good childhood. There was some really
Moments.
hard
Yeah.
moments. But like you said in the past, he was raising us. He raised us far better than he was raised.
Mhm.
And he used to always tell me, he fully believes that he was sent here to this earth to break that mold, and I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I owe um I'm I fully believe that I am who I am, because of him.
Mhm.
I may not have followed his footsteps and raised my kids the way we were raised, but I knew that this didn't work for me, and I needed to change it to raise my kids and to grow and to be. I needed to do things different than maybe what he expected.
Yeah.
And I do. I fully believe that a big part of me is because of a huge part of me is because of because of, this is going to sound really bad, but doing the opposite.
No, it's not gonna sound bad. We learn from our parents.
We do.
We learn in lessons that we can keep doing and things that we don't want to carry on.
Yeah.
Always. That's not, I don't think that's bad.
Yeah.
That's good.
But, and mom, I mean, every single one of us owes a huge, she is a huge part of us.
Yes.
That compassion and that love and that understanding that that I can see it in all of us. And she was always there. I remember when Dad was lecturing, she would walk through the kitchen and slam doors just to try to get his attention to stop, and she would get she would get so frustrated and so upset, and
that sometimes worked.
Yeah. Graduated from Bingham in 96. I left. I moved out kind of on not so good terms at the time. That was kind of a harder time in my life. I ended up moving down to Manti with one of my really good friends, staying with his mom and dad, who were my second parents. And again, I wasn't doing much, wasn't going very far. My life it's kind of just at a dead end. You can thank Mom for this. I got the crying gene from her.
Yes, we all thank her.
Anyways, so after I moved down here, I had met my future wife and her dad. We'd been dating for a while, and her dad come to me one day and said, "If you ever want to marry my daughter," he says, you need a, how did he word it? Basically you need a job. You need a future. And at that time, I was kind of making amends with Mom and Dad. So that's when I started looking into the military, and I joined the military, and we got married, and now we're living here.
Yeah. So who would you say, okay, who is your favorite person of all times? Anyone who has passed on, even from history or in your life, who would you say is your favorite person of all times and why? What do you admire about them, the characteristics, or anyway?
Well, I've got two, I guess. I've got two. George Washington, for starters. I wish I would have loved to have met George Washington. He became president not because he wanted to, because he knew he had to, and I admire that. I mean, that's pretty amazing. This country was being built, and he knew that he needed to take hold of it.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna make me cry again. Grandma Midgley.
I'm good.
Grandma Midgley. Mom got the best of Grandma Midgley, for sure. I always looked up to the grandma. She was always there. She was really intuitive too. I remember many times, especially after when Dan and I got married, we would get these random envelopes in the mail with a writing on it that you could barely read. Her cursive was so good that you could barely read it.
Yes.
But we'd get these random checks in the mail for 10, 20, 30 bucks, and she says, I just felt like you guys needed this. And I kid you not, they came at the most important time.
Yeah, I was inspired. And she would send articles to read with the checks.
Yeah.
Articles about what we needed to hear.
Yep. She was very, very, very in tune. And I know she still is. Yeah. At least with me, there's been many times that I felt her presence in either a decision I was making or just a hug.
That's awesome. Grandma means your grandma, mom's mom.
Mom's mom.
Yep.
Yep.
It's very cool. So her characteristics that you admire the most is in her intuitive and her compassion
Her
and
compassion. Yeah.
spiritual level. That's awesome.
She would love playing card games.
Oh yes.
And she would take the skips out of Skip-Bo because she felt so bad about having to play a skip. It was so
Or
funny.
Uno, she hated Uno
Yeah,
because she
Yeah,
wanna
didn't like the reverses and didn't like the skips and so on. She was
so bad.
she was so cute.
That's awesome.
Another huge influence in my life is Dana.
Yeah, for sure.
I owe a lot to her of who I am now, watching her go through her suffering, her pain, has really made me look at things different and to strive to be more compassionate, more understanding, less selfish. But her and I, when we met through a friend of a friend, and I don't know if she would say this, but the first time we met, I knew that that I wanted to pursue this. I mean, we had just said hi.
Wow.
But I knew that this might be pretty cool.
That's
and
awesome.
then when we actually had, like, I guess, our first meet up, our friends kind of set us up and
date. Called
a date. I wouldn't call it a date because that's not really what it was.
Okay.
But we just kind of hung out. So yeah, a date, our first
We
date.
forget too what it's called and how it works.
And we hit it off. We had some, good conversations, visited for a while. And after that, so I would drive down on Friday after work, and we'd come down and we'd stay in this old dumpy hotel in Ephraim because it was the only thing Jason, my friend, and I would come down and stay. And then Sunday evening, turn around and drive home, work all weekend, and then come back, do it weekend after weekend after weekend. And I think it was like the second time we'd come down, Dana had just graduated, and her and her friend had gone on this little trip to Lake Powell. They stopped in Canesville and stuff like that. And there's this hotel in Canesville. I don't know if you've ever been there. There's nothing there. It's a huge destination for dirt bike riders.
Oh.
So there's this hotel there. Well, she was saying that her and Brooke, her friend, were going to move to Canesville to run this hotel. Well, I thought she said Kaysville.
Oh.
I thought she said Kaysville. I never even heard of Canesville. Well, I kid you not, my heart broke.
Oh.
My heart broke. That's when I realized, that's when I knew that I loved her.
Wow, yeah.
And that I needed to do everything I could to keep her here so I could marry her.
Nice.
And then the rest is history. She followed me to Korea. The furthest she'd ever been is California, and she followed me to Korea for a year.
Wow.
She followed me to Kentucky for 4 years. And now we have our two beautiful, wonderful, amazing daughters and a son-in-law now.
Yes.
But no grandbabies. Not yet. 5 years.
Give them some time.
Yeah. But she has been, Dana has been an absolutely amazing inspiration in my life of how much one can really endure.
Yeah.
You just keep putting one foot in front of the other and hoping that eventually on the other end it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But
yeah, she's a woman of a lot of strength.
Yes.
An example to your girls.
Yep. She used to always get really, really down on herself about, she says, all my girls are ever going to know is that their mom was sick. So she's been suffering with chronic migraines, which, come to find out, aren't migraines. It's oh my gosh, I can't even say occipital
Wow,
neuralgia is what it is.
interesting.
Um,
There's a cure for it? Can they prevent that?
well, no, there's actually not. The only thing that they can do that occipital nerve. I know I'm saying it wrong. Decompression, or they can do a neurostimulator. And that's what we're working for right now is the neurostimulator. We're hoping within the next couple of months that she got approved. She just has to get her A1C and she's a diabetic to get her A1C down. So the surgeon will do the surgery.
Wow.
And that's what we're hoping on. Everything we've ever read up on it is pretty promising.
Oh, that'd be so good. Yeah, she suffered for a lot of years.
But she's always said that the one thing she regrets the most is that this is how her children are going to remember her, is their mom always being sick. But that's not the case.
No.
Our girls are the amazing, strong women. I got to call them women now because Stevie's 18. That they are is because they watched their mom suffer, and she never missed a dance. She never missed a gymnastics meet. No matter how sick she was always there.
Yeah.
And that's what the girls will remember.
Yes, that she's not letting it take her down so much that she lets the priorities get in the way. She goes to family get-togethers even at times.
Yeah.
She's not feeling up to it.
Yeah. She may not stay long.
We're a little crazy. Cause more
comes.
headaches for everyone.
But anyways.
Okay, this is the deep stuff. This stuff I liked. And in fact, if you have something else, we can always rewind, but spiritual, what religious or spiritual beliefs do you have that influence your life the most right now?
Well, I'm a faithful member of the LES Church. I have been my whole entire life. And I again owe that to my parents. Mom and dad went through the temple were sealed when I was 4, and Tiff was she was only a few months old.
Yes, yeah.
She was really young.
You're 4 years older than her.
And that's what did it. There for a long time, we were going to church, pretty faithfully. Well, no, actually, I think my entire life, we were, as kids, we were made to go to church, but it built that cornerstone, it built that foundation to continue to build on. And there was a time when it was when I was in high school. I remember walking into church one day and I was wearing my black Wranglers and my nice white shirt and a leather vest and my bolo tie. And there was this one lady who, I mean, I could have completely misinterpreted this, but she looked at me like the devil just walked through the church because I wasn't wearing a suit. Now, again, I may have completely misinterpreted it, but that kind of tipped the scales for me. If there was people like that in the church, I don't necessarily know if I wanted to deal with that, and again, I was a teenager at the time. And I started to kind of rebel, kind of do my own thing, started hanging out with a little rougher crowd and started smoking and drinking. Not a lot. I mean, it wasn't anything like, bad, but I didn't have anything to do with the church. I never stopped believing, but it just wasn't there to think about anymore. When I went to basic training, everyone is, when you're in a stressful situation like that, you're always looking for something to bring a little light. And I did. I kind of started. They were offering services. They had all the different services you could go to. And I think originally when I started, it was just to get out of the barracks on a Sunday for an hour. And so there was a pretty decent sized group, and there was one other kid in my basic training unit who was LDS, who actually was from St. George. And we started going together. But before I left, we'll back up a little bit. Before I left, I went and talked to the bishop, and and he'd given me a stack of these little scriptures, these little red ones. And I started reading more for entertainment, to get me out of that mindset. And then I graduated basic training, went to Korea, didn't do a whole lot there either. Ran into some missionaries who are from Utah.
Wow.
In Korea. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then when we got stationed in Kentucky, back to Fort Knox, it was a bit before my elders quorum president coming knocking on my door. And he introduced himself and started, getting me to come back to church. And I think the defining moment was I was sitting out on my porch. We just found out that Dana was pregnant with Shelby. And I was sitting there smoking. And I'm like, how on earth am I going to teach my children to do this? Not to do this.
Yeah.
If I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, that was the end. Dana had quit long before then. And that was it. I crushed it up, threw them away, and anything else I had, I got rid of it. And not long after that, my elders quorum president, we went out on splits. My elders quorum president, he looked at me and he says, Mike, he says, you want to know the real meaning of life? And I just kind of chuckled. He goes, no, he says, I'm serious. He says, you want to know the meaning of life? And the real meaning of life? And I says, yeah. And he says, the gospel is perfect. People are not. And if one incident in my life changed me, that was it. That alone has saved me, has saved me more times than I can even fathom.
I bet, yes. Wow.
And
you probably had no idea how much of an impact it made. That's awesome.
No, he didn't.
One belief.
But the being a member of the LDS Church is the greatest blessing in my life. Besides my parents and my family, that has had the most impact on my life. Knowing that the Savior has felt my pain, my frustrations, and did it all willingly, that's love like no other.
Yes.
And yeah.
Enough to carry you through anything.
Yeah.
Anything in life.
Yep. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it does. It does.
It's true.
But
that's awesome. We talk about politics. How involved are you in politics? What do you think of politics?
that it is a slippery slope in this world we're living in now. It really is. It's divided a lot of families. It's turned a lot of best friends against each other. Growing up, I don't ever remember hearing a lot of mom and dad talking about voting. As I got older, I remember watching the news with dad and talk about that kind of stuff, but not a lot. It wasn't until I joined the military and realized that our founding fathers, I mean, in all reality, they gave their lives to write the Constitution, to give us the freedoms that we have. When being in the military, it's very patriotic. Every morning you're out. When the flag goes up, you honor the flag going up. You honor the flag going down, you're taught what that flag, that piece of fabric, those colors really represent, and what people gave for that. So to answer your, I mean, and that's when I started getting a little more into politics. And it wasn't until like, well, just the last 16 years or so, the last several elections, when I've been more involved. But that just comes with age and time, I think.
Yeah, maturity.
But you start to see how it is affecting you, and you start to see how it's going to affect the future. But I believe everybody, no matter what, no matter what color, no matter what nationality, has the right and the privilege to come to the United States, to come to go through the change like our ancestors went through. This country was built on immigrants, 100% built on immigrants. And but it needs to be done correctly. There's laws and there's rules set up for that.
For the reason,
for that reason,
yeah.
I believe to my core the Constitution and what it stands for. I always said if I had to leave this earth early, I would, if I could choose, it would be either defending my God, my family, or my country. And I didn't get the chance to actually
fight,
and I'm grateful for that.
Yes.
I am so I look back on it now, I'm so grateful for that. But now politics does it does play a pretty I don't want to say significant role, but a pretty big role in our lives right now, especially at home. Stevie, my youngest, she's 18 now, and she was devastated. She was absolutely devastated. Her 18th birthday was couple of days. Yes, I know I'm going to get in trouble for this.
It was a couple of days
just after. A couple of days after the election, and she was just devastated that she couldn't vote in probably one of the most significant elections that this country has seen, and she stays very informed, which is good. She looks at both sides, which that's the only way you're going to make an informed decision, is if you look at both sides. If you follow one direction, that's not an informed decision.
So hard. You have to even find the right sources within the both sides, because my daughter too, she wants to be educated with politics, but I don't feel comfortable showing her even some of the things that I like to watch. I want her to, well, I actually do I like facts. I like to actually see the press conferences and the Congress, the meetings that they have with congressional meetings, because it comes straight from their mouths, and the laws and studying the laws. I want her to learn all that kind of stuff, but you're right. It can get really confusing because they're really good at convincing, aren't they? They're good at saying the right things to convince, especially the younger generation. They're gonna want them to be confused. I have some fun questions for you. Ready for some fun questions?
Yes.
So you are the author of your autobiography. What would you say is the theme of your story, your life story?
That's what I would say. Faith and patriotism.
Yeah, I would say that too. I would say that. Faith for sure. Okay, who is the most famous person you've ever met?
So when I was stationed at Fort Knox, I got tasked out to work at the USO in the Louisville airport. And when we'd work days, we'd go down to the information booth and sit there. So anyone traveling, if they needed any information on how to get to Fort Knox or anything like that, there was someone there. And I remember sitting there one day and I watched Ric Flair. Is that yeah, Ric Flair. He was a wrestler in the late 80s, 90s, I think it was. And I remember I was sitting there watching, I'm like, my goodness, he looks familiar. And this gal that was there, she leans over, she says, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "Man, he looks really familiar." She says, "That's Ric Flair." And so he comes walking down, and the gal that was working there, she was this quite pretty little blonde, and she would, really good at attracting everybody. But anyway, so he stops and talks to her, and she introduced him. She introduced us and stuff like that, and really great guy. And then Dana and I were Dana was leaving to go somewhere, and Brock Lesnar, who was another wrestler, he was a professional college wrestler, and then went into wrestling, and got to meet him. But I think the most influential person that I ever got to meet was at it was a state conference here when they split the wards. Elder Bednar
Oh, yeah.
was there, and they asked me if I would bear my testimony and talk about intimidating.
Yeah, I'd say.
That was intimidating, but I got to shake his hand and talk to him for a minute. And then when they dedicated the temple, Elder Rasband
Oh, yeah.
was there, and I don't know why. I really like him, but for some reason he's the only one that I actually remember when he was put in the Quorum of the 12, and he just had this impact. I still don't know. I still don't quite know why he's the only one that I remember.
Wow, yeah.
But we were just finishing up doing tithing, and was standing there in the hallway, and I'm like, man, that voice really sounds familiar. And a guy comes up and he's like, "Do you know who's standing at the pulpit?" And I'm like, "No." And he says, "That's Elder Rasband talking to that ward." And so it was hilarious. Everyone started walking down the halls, and in our chapel, you can go to the back and go up the stairs.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see
right.
there was like tons of people walking up and down the stairs, just trying to get a glimpse of Elder Rasband. Well, when he left, when they come out of the chapel, we were standing there. There was a pretty big group of us standing there, and he comes walking down, and he looks around, and he says, "Have I shaken your guys' hand yet?" And we're like, "No." And he goes, "All right, let's get this going."
Oh, cute.
And shook all of our hands, said hi to us, and you could just tell, that light, that love was just beaming from these men. And that's really, really, really neat to see.
That's awesome. You have been a lot of nice famous people, from wrestlers and prophets.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Fighters are all fighters. That's what they all say,
Yeah.
right? Fighters get
Yep.
something. What cause are you most passionate about right now?
This might ruffle a couple of feathers, but
Okay.
but
Okay.
I am very, very passionate about the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
And I totally understand where both sides are coming from. It's not anything new, the fight against gun control, and it's not because I make money off of it. It is because without it, we wouldn't have a First Amendment. We wouldn't have any other amendment. We wouldn't have a Constitution. It does draw a lot of controversy, because of the problems it has caused, but drugs are
Right,
legal.
it's the users, right?
It's the user.
That's not the
Right,
tool.
right. The firearm
Yeah.
is just a tool. It is an inanimate object. It cannot act until it is acted upon.
Yes.
And when you get evil, to take over, that's exactly what's going to happen. Exactly what's going to happen. And it's not going to matter if it's a firearm, if it's a knife, it's a car, or if it's a U-Haul full of explosives.
Yeah.
You know, evil is going to find its way, and until evil is gone, you know, and what that day will come.
Yeah.
100% that day will come. There'll be no need for weapons. There'll be no need for war. There'll be no need for that.
Yeah.
But until then, it'll be a great cause of mine.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really, really enjoy, I've made some incredible friends. I mean, amazing friends that I would have never have met if I wasn't in this
Arena.
line,
Yeah.
in this arena,
Yeah.
you know, but so I may have made some really good friends in the other arena.
Do you want to say what it is that you're doing or not?
So I started a business. Well, this friend of mine and I started a business called Sam Pete Long Range Shooters, and we host long range precision matches. And we've been doing it for going on. Him and I split ways after the first or second year, and I've taken off with it. He's done his thing, I've done my thing, and I would have never in a million years guessed that it has turned into what it is. I mean, it's I fill up my matches in a very, very short time, which is great.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's very cool. So yes, it's San Pete long range shooters. Come down and go to one of the matches.
Yeah.
Nice matches.
Yeah.
So tell us about your accident that you had a couple years ago. Because it's not the accident that is as important or valuable from that story as how you were saved from it. It's incredible for me to hear. So if you want to share that.
No, I don't mind, because it is well,
it's a turning point.
That was a big turning point in my life also. So it was 2012. It was I was working for Manti City at the time, and pageant was just getting ready to start practice. And Emma, our niece, she'd come down to be in the pageant with Shelby. And Darren, brother, and
Emma's
dad, Emma's dad, they were going to go out and shooting at this little range for a while. Well, it was during work. I was at work. I fibbed to my boss and told him I had to leave for a different reason.
Have you told your boss that yet?
Oh, yes, he knows.
Okay.
Yes. He's long been retired, and I did. I admitted it all.
You're not working there anymore.
I don't work there anymore anyways. And so I did. We packed up our stuff and we went out to the range, and we were just getting ready to pack up. And it's always the last thing that happens, always. And there was I was new into shooting, so I didn't quite understand what soft steel was, what hard steel was. And there was this target. My brother-in-law,
Tiffany's husband.
Well, no, sorry. Oh. So Lindsay's husband.
Oh,
so Dana's sister's husband. he had made a comment not long before that he shot this piece of steel, and the bullet dang near went through, and he thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, gotcha.
So
so it's his fault.
So, well, no, it's my fault because I tend to be kind of prideful sometimes when it comes to this thing. So there was this little chunk of steel out in front of me, and I loaded up around. It was a 270, 130 grain bullet, and I shot this chunk of steel, and I don't even remember really feeling anything. I felt this thud, wasn't bad. And I'm like, what the heck? And I thought maybe I scoped myself, but I couldn't figure out how I scoped myself clean over here. And I looked down at my action thinking I blew it up, and that was intact. And then right about that time, it seemed like it was a long time, but it was very, very quickly. I glance out of the corner of my eye and I see a steady stream of blood the size of my thumb
Oh my God.
coming out of my head. I stand up, I walk over, and I set my gun down. I didn't even drop it. I set my gun down and I grab a rag, a dirty, nasty rag out of my
Oh my
bag,
gosh.
and stuck it on my head. And Darren and Dad were just packing up. And I says, Dad, I says, I need to go. I said, I think I need to go to the hospital. He's like, oh, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know. I must have grazed myself or something like that. So had no idea what was going on. There was no pain. I still wasn't in any pain. And we jump in the truck and we were headed to the clinic. I called Dana and she's like, oh, she says, just go to the clinic for right now. And we get about halfway there to the Manti clinic. We get about halfway there and Dana calls back. She says, oh, the clinic is closed for lunch. She said, so you'll need to go to the ER. I'm like, okay. Still, we had no idea what was going on. I think I was starting to come out of shock and I was starting to feel pressure. And we get to the ER and they take me in and they do a CAT scan and they wheel me back out into this room. Dad was standing there. There was two surgeons, the ER doctor, there was several other people, and Dr. Cole was his name. I still remember him. He looks over at me. I was laying there. He goes, I think you've got something stuck in your head. Just very casual, like
Gosh.
he says, and then Dad, he's like, oh, there's proof there's something in there now, just joking around.
Oh my.
And he says, it's severe enough that we have life flight coming to get you. We're gonna life flight you to Provo.
Wow.
And so they wheel me back to my room.
And that was when I got the message at work.
Yeah.
Your brother's being life flighted, and I was panicked and
Yeah.
on my
Well,
way to the hospital.
everybody was. That's about when the call went out.
Yeah.
The girls were all over with Mom, all over to the pool, and the Mom being Mom, she panicked a little bit, and um, uh, she's told the girls something about I was shot in the head.
Yeah.
So back to the ER. They wheeled me in, and Darren was kind of a ways behind us. And we told Darren that's where we're going, and he shows up with these big giant fountain drinks, and they had those chiller straws back then. They're the aluminum straws, and he was just so excited about it. He come walking and he goes, "Here, I brought you a drink, and figured you'd need a drink." And I swear the nurse came out of nowhere and just about slapped it out of his hand. And she's, no, 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 no. He says, he can't have anything. He's going to be in surgery. And Darren's like, what?
Well,
And that's when I can't remember if I asked for a blessing or if Dad mentioned it or if Darren mentioned it. But Darren and Dad gave me a blessing. And in that blessing, they said he specifically said that there was concourses of angels that saved my life.
concourses. Wow.
Concourses of angels.
Wow.
And that was a really pretty big turning point in my life that maybe I wasn't so bad. If these angels are willing to save me, then maybe there is something that I'm supposed to be doing here on this earth. But so I get to the ER, I get to Provo. The flight surgeon, the flight nurse, he's like, man, he says, this is really weird. He says, I don't think we've ever had a patient that I remember that was conscious during his flight. And he said, so I guess enjoy your flight. So we get to the hospital, we get to the Provo, and they wheel me out, and the nurse comes out, and her eyes were about that big, and she's like, I'm sitting up holding my own equipment, and she's like, this is our gunshot victim? And he's like, yep. He says, Mike, this is your nurse. And she's like, okay. And we were kind of joking around about it. They wheel me in, and they have the trauma team was all in the hall, because the call that came in was a gunshot wound to the head.
Yeah.
Most people are missing half their face. And they go wheeling me in, and she says, Mike, she says, here's your trauma team. And everyone was like looking at each other. And they come in and they did their thing.
So what did you have, that rag on your head or something,
Well,
or a Band-Aid?
by that time they had it bandaged up and cleaned up and stuff like that. I wasn't bleeding much, but the scary part, the part why it was so life-threatening is because the jacket, the piece that came back and it hit me hard enough that it fractured my skull, but it didn't penetrate the lining of my brain, which again, the surgeon, when we went in, he says that is beyond a miracle. He says, if that would have penetrated that lining, he says, you would have fought it for the rest of your life, with infection or whatever. And again, so there's part two of that miracle. But so I was taken into surgery. I remember getting back to the OR, and the surgeon was Dr. Gardner, was his name, who's retired since then. He says, or he was just telling me what they were going to do and stuff like that. And he said, do you have any questions for me? And I says, yeah. I says, if there's anything in there, can I have it? And he looks down at me like this, and he says, man, you are sick. Good night. And so sure enough, they wheeled me out, and Dana tells a story better than I can. My wife, they wheeled me out, and I was still half out of it. And she says, when they come out of the elevator, she says, you have this little baggie in your hand, just like this, smiling, just grinning from ear to ear. And
they probably never saw that before.
No, and
especially gunshot wound.
And I still keep it with me.
Oh, you put it on the keychain. Wow. Oh my gosh.
It reminds me of how fragile life is.
Yes.
I still get
so what is that? That's the jacket?
So that's, oh yes.
In your
yes,
skull?
that's yes. So what we figured happened is when I shot the steel, it was a piece of soft steel, which again, like I said, I had no idea. What had happened is the bullet had separated from the lead. The lead is actually still in the target. I have that at home too.
Oh, wow.
And we figured as it swung, it was on a chain, as it swung, that carried enough kinetic energy to come back. And it hit me right here. I mean, that far away from my eye. Yeah. And that's what would have killed you, right? If it would have gone into your eye, it would have been into your head, in your brain. Yeah, that's what the surgeon said. He says, you really don't know how lucky you are. He was really worried that I was going to have eye drooping and stuff like that. And I've had no problems, no headaches, no nothing. Wow. They ended up putting in a quarter-size titanium plate, and I think that's the title of your autobiography, Titanium. So that's actually kind of funny, because at the time that David Guetta song, is it David Guetta? Yeah, Titanium, that song Titanium came out. Well, Emma thought that was pretty cool, and she would sing it to me and stuff like that all the time. Joke around about that song, and that song was made for me. And okay, that's true. That's your title. That's your autobiography title. Titanium. Yeah, that would be a good one. Something like that, made of titanium, or titanium life. I don't know.
And come up with something creative. Okay, so now this is awesome. Your story is so awesome, and I do see definitely faith and patriotism. I definitely see that. Faith is huge. The miracles that have happened in your life have all come because of your faith. They don't come without that. So I think that's good. So now fast forwarding in 5 years, describe your life in 5 years as if it was occurring right now.
Well, I'm 5 years closer to retirement. Honestly, I hope to be at the same job I'm at. Like I said, 5 years, getting 5
You'll
years.
probably have grandchildren.
I
You might have grandchildren
so.
or grandchild.
I hope so. I hope so. You know, I hope to be, well, yeah, I hope to be 5 years closer to the Savior. 5 years closer to my family. And fishing 5 times as much.
Yes, that's awesome. 5 years, that'll be 2030.
2030. Yeah, 5 years away from retirement.
Oh, what did I do that? So, okay, that about wraps it up. So if there's anything else you want to share that you wanted to add, we talked a little bit about siblings. You talked about some of the roles they played in your life, but if you want to describe them, you can, however you want.
Denise has always been a huge inspiration in my life. I love the fact that her and I are 100% on different sides of the aisle, but the fact that we can call each other and have conversations, have civilized conversations about our beliefs, and it is amazing. That's what this country needs.
Yeah.
Is to be able to agree to disagree, to have those conversations, to see why that person believes the way they do, and not be upset about
No
them.
judgment.
You
Yes.
know,
It doesn't hurt you. Yeah.
Denise and I have always, it is we definitely have that little brother, big sister relationship. She still calls me, I'm 47 years old, and she still calls me her baby bro.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Darren, has always been a little more reserved. We have a good relationship. We'll talk. We don't talk a whole lot, but man, when we talk for hours.
Yes.
We talk for hours, and it is so
Yeah.
great. You go to their house, his and Mel's house, and I always feel welcome. It's awesome to have a big brother like that. I've learned so much. I've learned so much from you, so much about growth, so much about following dreams, not being afraid to follow your dreams. So much love and compassion and understanding, and I feel like we have a good relationship. I know there for a while, I mean, with everybody, it was, things were kind of hard, and I get kind of standoffish, and I may come across as upset or mean or whatever, but I don't mean to be like that.
No, I've never thought that.
And then Tiff, I love my little sis. We don't talk as much as we probably should, but again, when Tiff and I talk, it's for hours, and there's nothing that we can't talk about. I don't want to say it's different between Tiff and I
Well, you guys grew
and
up
you guys,
together.
but we grew up together. How she even still likes me is mind blowing. The way I treated her, oh my goodness. Tiff, I'm really sorry the way I treated you.
I think it's just forgiving you.
but to be able to talk about our kids, and you know, to watch each other's kids grow up, has been just absolutely awesome. I think the coolest thing about it all is when we get together, all of us, it's like we have never missed a day.
Yeah.
You know, we may not talk a lot, but I fully believe we have a really good, strong bond,
Yeah.
really good relationship. At least that's the way I take it. I hope
Yes.
everyone else feels that
We
way.
do, yes.
But
The craziness we get going with our game plan and our conversations, and it's always fun. I always try to get everyone together as much as possible, but
yeah,
it's kind of hard to do that
that's why it's
these
fun.
days. Yes.
Yeah.
It's true. That's why it is fun. That's
it's fun
why
to do
it makes
this.
it worth it, because it's only a few times a year, right?
Yeah.
And we love it.
Yep.
Make it work. Very
Yeah.
good. Well, Mikey, thank you so much. See, there I called you Mikey. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's not something that you don't get to hear life stories every day from your family members. So it's been so rewarding for me to be able to hear everyone's stories. And the fun thing that Denise and I have talked about is how we all have the same experiences, similar experiences, but such a wide variety of differences of how it affected us, how these experiences affected us.
Yeah. But no, I do appreciate this. It's been fun.
Yes,
You made it a lot easier than I thought.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad. It was so fun to hear your story.